My name is Clayton. I'm 31 years old, and my family left me at a bus stop with $60 in my pocket the day after I graduated high school. Before I tell you about the moment I saw their faces again 13 years later, let me know where you're watching from in the comments below. It's always incredible to see how far these stories can travel. The limousine moved like a shark through a sea of minivans and sensible sedans. It was long, black, and ridiculously out of place, parked on the manicured suburban street where my Aunt Caroline lived. I could see the party through the tinted windows, a sprawling affair across a perfect green lawn dotted with white tents. People were laughing, holding champagne flutes that caught the afternoon sun. It was the annual Vance family reunion, an event I hadn't been invited to in over a decade. The driver, a kind older man named Mr. Peterson, whose prized vintage car I'd once restored the wooden dash for, looked at me in the rearview mirror. "Ready, son?" he asked. I smoothed down the front of my linen shirt. It was simple, but it cost more than the entire wardrobe I'd owned for the first 5 years of my new life. I wasn't wearing a suit. I didn't want to look like I was trying too hard. I wanted to look like I belonged. "As I'll ever be," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. The moment I stepped out of the car, a hush fell over the nearest group of people. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. I felt 100 pairs of eyes on me, a wave of curiosity and appraisal. I ignored them and walked calmly toward the gate, my expensive leather boots making no sound on the soft grass. I saw them almost immediately. My father, Richard, stood near the barbecue pit, holding court with a group of his brothers, a proprietary hand on the shiny new grill. My mother, Eleanor, was flitting between tables, adjusting floral centerpieces. And there, under the largest tent, was my older brother, Nathan, the golden child. He was laughing, a little too loudly, surrounded by cousins who had always orbited him like planets around the sun. For a long, surreal moment, they just looked at me. Not at me, Clayton, but at a stranger who had crashed their party. I saw the flicker of confusion, the slight annoyance. I had changed, of course. The scrawny, scared 18-year-old was gone. I was taller, broader from years of working with my hands. My face had lost its boyish softness, replaced by lines of focus and a few scars from careless moments in the workshop. I walked straight toward my mother. As I got closer, her polite hostess smile faltered, replaced by a puzzled frown. She looked me up and down, taking in the watch on my wrist, the quiet confidence in my posture. She didn't see her son. She saw money. She saw status. She saw someone who might be important. She stepped forward, blocking my path, her smile returning, but this time it was strained, questioning. She tilted her head and gave a little laugh. "Excuse me," she said, her voice dripping with the polite condescension she reserved for the help. "I'm sorry. Can I help you?" And just like that, the 13 years between then and now collapsed. The manicured lawn dissolved into a dusty, gravel-covered lot. The smell of expensive perfume was replaced by the stench of diesel fumes. Because the last time I'd been this close to her, the last time she'd looked me in the eye, she'd said something very, very different. "Good luck out there." Those were the last words my mother said to me. There was no warmth in them, no sadness. It was like she was speaking to a stranger she'd held the door for at a grocery store. She didn't hug me. She just pressed a thin envelope into my hand and stepped back, creating a space between us that felt a mile wide. The day before had been my high school graduation. I'd walked across the stage, clutched my diploma, and smiled for the cameras, pretending we were a normal, happy family. Nathan, who had graduated 2 years prior with honors and a full athletic scholarship, had clapped me on the back and made a joke about how he was surprised I'd made it. My father had just grunted, his disappointment a familiar cloud that followed me everywhere. The small celebration dinner afterward was tense. The entire conversation revolved around Nathan's upcoming internship and my distinct lack of a plan. They had talked about my future as if I wasn't even in the room, a problem that needed to be solved, or better yet, removed. The next morning, they told me to pack a bag. "We're going for a drive," my father had said, his voice flat. I was naive. I thought maybe we were going on a trip, a last-ditch effort to connect. I packed my oldest clothes, a few books, and the small wooden bird I'd carved in shop class. One of the few things I was ever proud of. The drive was silent. I sat in the back, Nathan next to me, scrolling on his phone, oblivious. We drove past the edge of town, past the familiar landmarks and onto the interstate. Then, we pulled into the parking lot of a desolate Greyhound bus station. It was a grimy, forgotten place that smelled of stale cigarettes and desperation. "What's going on?" I asked, a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. My father turned off the engine and looked at me in the rearview mirror. His eyes were cold, like chips of ice. "We've done all we can for you, Clayton. You're 18. You're an adult now. It's time for you to make your own way." My mother got out and opened my door. "Get your bag," she said. I was frozen. This couldn't be happening. "What are you talking about? Where am I supposed to go?" "That's for you to figure out." My father's voice cut through the air. "We paid for your brother's college fund, and we can't afford to support someone with no ambition." I stumbled out of the car, pulling my worn-out backpack with me. The zipper was broken on the front pocket. Felt symbolic. Nathan didn't even look up from his phone. It was then that my mother handed me the envelope and delivered her 5-word farewell. She got back in the car. She didn't look back. The car pulled out of the parking lot, kicking up a cloud of dust, and disappeared down the highway. I stood there for what felt like an hour, the envelope still clutched in my hand. The weight of my backpack felt impossibly heavy. I finally opened the envelope. Inside were 3 $20 bills. $60. That was what my 18 years of life were worth to them. A bus pulled in, hissing to a stop. A few weary-looking people got off. An older man with a kind, wrinkled face sat down on the bench near me. He saw me standing there, a ghost in the harsh sunlight, and opened a bag of M&Ms. He held it out to me. "You look like you could use some," he said. His name was Samuel. I don't know why I remember that, but I do. It was the first act of kindness I'd received in a world that had suddenly cracked open beneath my feet. I took one, my hand shaking. I looked up at the departure board. The letters were flickering. A bus was leaving in 10 minutes for a place called Brookfield. I'd never heard of it. It didn't matter. I walked to the counter, paid for a one-way ticket, and got on the bus without looking back. There was nothing to look back at. The bus ride was a blur of smudged landscapes and the low hum of the engine. I didn't sleep. I just stared out the window, watching the world I knew disappear. Brookfield wasn't so much a town as a place the highway had forgotten to bypass completely. It had one main street, a blinking traffic light, and a collection of tired-looking buildings. It was perfect. It was a place where nobody knew my name, where I could be completely invisible. With my remaining money, I found the cheapest motel in town, the Sunny Pines, which was ironic because it was neither sunny nor had any pines. It was a row of sad, peeling paint doors. The room cost me $20 a night. I paid for one night, leaving me with just enough for a cheap meal. The room smelled like bleach and regret. The bedspread was thin and scratchy. But it was a roof. It was mine. That first night, I lay on the lumpy mattress and stared at the water-stained ceiling. The silence was deafening. For the first time, the full weight of my solitude crashed down on me. There was no one to call. No one was looking for me. I was a ghost. It would have been easy to give up, to just let the despair swallow me whole. But then, a spark of something else ignited in my chest. Anger. A hot, clean anger. They thought I was nothing. They thought I would fail. They had written me off. And I decided, right there in that dingy motel room, that I would not give them the satisfaction. The next morning, I bought a cheap spiral notebook and a pen. On the first page, I wrote in big, block letters, Clayton's Survival Guide. Underneath, I started a list. Find a job. Any job. Find a cheaper place to live. Save every single penny. Don't think about them. At the bottom of the page, I drew a line and wrote a sentence that would become my mantra. Break the cycle. Finding a job was brutal. I was a kid with no experience and no references. I got turned down everywhere. But I was persistent. I walked into every store, every gas station, every diner. Finally, the manager of a 24-hour gas station on the edge of town gave me a chance. The graveyard shift. $8 an hour. It wasn't a career, but it was a start. It was a lifeline. My life fell into a grueling routine. I'd work all night under the humming fluorescent lights, stocking shelves and selling cigarettes to tired truckers. During the day, I slept for a few hours, then went out looking for more work. I got a second job cleaning the greasy floors of a Chinese buffet after they closed. Then a third, washing dishes on Sundays at a local diner called Rita's. I moved out of the motel and into a tiny room I rented above a hardware store. It was little more than a closet with a window, but the rent was cheap. I ate instant noodles and day-old bread. I owned 2 pairs of jeans and 3 t-shirts, which I washed by hand in the sink. I was constantly exhausted, my body aching from the physical labor. But every time I cashed those small paychecks, a fierce sense of pride burned in me. This was mine. I had earned this. Every dollar was a brick in the foundation of a new life, a life they had no part in. I was alone, but for the first time, I was truly on my own. Rita's Diner was the kind of place that felt like it had existed forever. It had red vinyl booths, a long Formica countertop, and the constant, comforting smell of coffee and bacon. My job was in the back, in a steamy, loud corner of the kitchen, wrestling with mountains of dirty dishes. It was mindless, grueling work, but it paid in cash, and Rita let me eat any leftover food at the end of my shift. It was there that I met Chloe. She was a waitress, though she looked more like she belonged at a rock concert. Her hair was a constantly changing shade of electric color, purple one week, neon green the next. She had piercings and tattoos and an attitude that could strip paint. The first time we spoke, she caught me staring at the intricate dragon tattoo coiling up her arm. "Take a picture, it'll last longer," she said without any heat, just a smirk. I flushed and looked back down at the greasy water. "Sorry, it's just really good work." She leaned against the doorframe. "You an artist or something?" "No," I said quickly. "Just notice things, I guess." Chloe became my first friend. My only friend. She'd bring me a glass of ice-cold water during the dinner rush, her eyes saying, "You're dying back here." She'd sneak me an extra slice of pie. She never asked about my past or where I came from. In Brookfield, you didn't ask those questions. Everyone had a story they were running from or running to. She accepted me as I was, the quiet kid in the back who worked like a machine. One Sunday, after a particularly brutal shift, she found me sitting on the back steps, rubbing my sore shoulders. "You look like death warmed over," she said, handing me a beer. "You need to do something besides work, sleep, and breathe dishwater." "Like what?" I asked, taking a grateful sip. "I don't know. A hobby. Something that uses your hands for something other than scrubbing egg yolk." She paused, studying me. "You know, my uncle needs some help down at his workshop. He's an old grump, but he pays. It's just sweeping up, moving lumber. Easy stuff." Her uncle was Elias. Elias's workshop was a cathedral of sawdust and sunlight. It was a massive old barn filled with hulking, ancient machines and stacks of wood that smelled of pine and cedar and earth. Elias himself was as weathered as the wood he worked with. He was a tall, stooped man in his 70s with hands like gnarled oak roots and eyes that saw everything. He was a man of few words. He hired me on the spot, his only instruction being, "Don't touch the saws." So I swept, I stacked, I organized, and I watched. I watched the way Elias's hands moved over the wood, with a reverence and an understanding that was almost spiritual. He could look at a raw piece of lumber and see the table or the chair it was meant to become. He didn't just build furniture, he gave the wood a second life. I never talked much, just did my work. But he noticed me watching. One afternoon, he was struggling to fit a complex joint together. Without thinking, I pointed. "If you shave just a millimeter off the inside edge there," I said softly, "I think it'll slide right in." Elias stopped. He squinted at the joint, then at me. He took a hand plane, shaved off a sliver of wood exactly where I'd pointed, and the joint slid together perfectly. He didn't say thank you. He just grunted and looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time. "You got the eye, kid," he said. The next day, he handed me a block of scrap wood and a small carving knife. "Stop watching," he said. "Start doing." That small block of wood became my entire world. After my shifts at the gas station and the diner, I would go to the workshop. While Elias worked on his commissions, I would sit in a corner, the carving knife feeling both foreign and perfectly natural in my hand. First, I was clumsy. I cut myself more times than I could count. My first few attempts were just misshapen lumps. But Elias never criticized me. He'd just walk by, glance at my work, and say something cryptic like, "Listen to the grain," or "Don't force it." Slowly, I began to understand. Wood wasn't just a material, it had a personality, a will. You couldn't bully it into a shape. You had to work with it, persuade it. My first real project was a simple box. I spent weeks on it, sanding it until it was as smooth as river stone, finishing it with oil until the grain glowed. When I showed it to Elias, he turned it over and over in his hands, his thumb tracing the dovetail joints. "Not bad," he grunted, which from him was the highest praise imaginable. He then handed me a stack of old woodworking magazines. "Read these. Stop making trinkets. Start thinking about function." I devoured those magazines. I studied designs, learned about different types of wood, different styles of joinery. The anger that had fueled me for so long began to transform into something else. Passion. When I was in the workshop, with the smell of sawdust in the air and a tool in my hand, the ghosts of my past faded away. I wasn't the boy who was thrown away. I was a creator, a builder. My first commission was an accident. A woman came into the shop to order a custom bookshelf from Elias, but he was booked solid for months. She was about to leave, disappointed, when she saw a small, elegant end table I had just finished, sitting in a corner. "Who made that?" she asked. Elias nodded in my direction. "The kid." She looked from the table to me, surprised. "Would you be willing to make a bookshelf? Something simple to fit in an alcove." I was terrified, but Elias gave me a slight, almost imperceptible nod. I can try," I stammered. We agreed on a price, $100. Felt like $1 million. I spent the next 2 weeks pouring every ounce of my being into that bookshelf. I measured a dozen times before making a single cut. I obsessed over every detail. When I delivered it to her house, she was thrilled. She handed me the cash, her face beaming. Driving back to the workshop, I held the $100 bill in my hand. It was different from the money I earned from my other jobs. This wasn't payment for my time or my sweat. It was payment for my skill, for my vision. It was proof that I could create something of value from nothing. That night, I quit my job at the Chinese buffet. The next week, I gave my notice at the gas station. I kept my weekend shift at Rita's, partly for the steady cash, but mostly for Chloe and the free pie. I took the small amount of money I had saved, a few $100s painstakingly gathered over 2 years, and officially registered a business. I stood in the county clerk's office, my heart pounding. For the business name, I didn't hesitate. I wrote down the one name I was determined to reclaim and redefine on my own terms. Vance Woodcraft. The next few years were a blur of sawdust and dedication. Word of mouth is a powerful thing in a small town, and slowly the orders started to trickle in. A coffee table here, a set of shelves there. Each project was a new lesson. Elias was always there, a silent guardian, offering a quiet word of advice or simply leaving a new tool on my workbench without explanation. I never paid him rent for the space. When I tried, he just waved his hand dismissively. "Your work is the rent," he'd say. "Just don't burn the place down." My clientele grew. I started a simple website with photos of my work. Soon, people from neighboring towns were contacting me. I was working 16-hour days, but it never felt like work. I was building something, not just furniture, but a life, a reputation. Eventually, I got too busy to handle everything myself. I needed help. Reluctantly, I put up a help wanted sign. I hired 2 guys, Ray and Leo. Ray was quiet and methodical, a hard worker. Leo was charming and quick to learn, always full of praise for my designs. I was proud to be an employer. I made sure to pay them a decent salary, more than I had ever made at the gas station. I thought I was building a team. That's when I met Maya. She walked into the workshop one afternoon, a camera bag slung over her shoulder. She had an intensity about her, a way of looking at things as if she was seeing the story behind them. She introduced herself as an independent filmmaker, working on a series about modern artisans. "I heard about you," she said, her eyes scanning the workshop, lingering on a half-finished rocking chair. "The ghost of Brookfield, who makes beautiful things." I was wary at first. I wasn't used to attention. But Maya was different. She wasn't interested in my past. She was fascinated by my process. She asked intelligent questions about the wood, about my designs. She saw the art in what I did, not just the craft. I agreed to let her film. For a few weeks, Maya was a quiet presence in the workshop. She captured the dance of creation, the screaming whine of the table saw, the gentle curl of wood shavings from a hand plane, the focused intensity on my face. We started talking, first about work, then about everything else. I found myself telling her things I'd never told anyone, not even Chloe. She listened, her gaze steady and empathetic. It was during this time that things with Leo started to feel off. He began asking a lot of questions about pricing, about my client list. I dismissed it as ambition. I wanted my employees to be engaged. One evening, I came back to the workshop late to grab a sketchbook I'd forgotten. The lights were off, but I heard a noise from the small office. I pushed the door open and found Leo, his back to me, taking pictures of my sketchbook with his phone. The book was open to the designs for a huge, custom dining set I was creating for a wealthy client, my biggest commission to date. The room went cold. "Leo, what are you doing?" He spun around, his face a mask of panic. He quickly shoved his phone in his pocket. "Clayton, hey, I was just admiring your new designs. So incredible." The lie was so blatant it felt like a slap in the face. My stomach twisted. "Let me see your phone, Leo." "What?" "No, that's my private property." I didn't shout. I didn't get angry. A strange, icy calm washed over me. I had seen this kind of casual betrayal before. "Get your things," I said, my voice low and flat. "You're done here." He started to argue, but he saw the look in my eyes and his mouth snapped shut. He gathered his coat and left without another word. I sank into my chair, the sketchbook feeling tainted in my hands. I had trusted him. I had given him a chance, a good job, and he had tried to sell me out. It was a harsh reminder that even in the new life I had built, the shadows of the old one, of betrayal and being seen as a resource to be exploited, were never too far away. Maya finished her film a month after the incident with Leo. She called it Hands Make Homes. It was a short, 10-minute documentary, but it was beautiful. She had captured the soul of the workshop, the story of wood and patience. She uploaded it to a few video sharing sites and sent the link to some local art blogs. I didn't expect much. Maybe a few nice comments, a couple of new orders. I was wrong. The video exploded. I don't know how or why. The algorithm, a share from an influential design blogger, fate, who knows. But within a week, it had tens of thousands of views. Then hundreds of thousands. Then over 1 million. My email inbox, which usually got 2 or 3 messages a day, was suddenly flooded. Orders poured in from all over the country. My little one-man show Plus Ray had become a national sensation overnight. I was overwhelmed, terrified, and exhilarated all at once. And then the other emails started coming. The ones that weren't orders. The first was from a name I hadn't seen in over a decade, Eleanor Vance. My mother. The subject line was simply thinking of you. The email was short, breezy, as if we'd just spoken last week. "Hey stranger, just saw a lovely little video about a woodworker with our name. What a coincidence. It made me think of you. Hope you're well. Would love to catch up sometime." My hands went numb. What a coincidence. The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. She knew it was me. Of course she did. But she couldn't even admit it, couldn't acknowledge what she'd done. A few days later, an email from my father, Robert Blake, arrived. He hadn't even bothered with a personal message. It was just a forwarded attachment. A bright, cheerful digital flyer for the annual Vance family reunion. The flyer was covered in clip art of happy families having picnics. Felt like a sick joke. I didn't respond to either of them. I just printed the reunion flyer and taped it to the wall of my workshop, right next to my workbench. Every day I would look at it. It wasn't a reminder of a family I missed. It was a reminder of what I had overcome. It was a battle plan. The final blow came in the form of a phone call. It was my Aunt Caroline, my mother's sister. Her voice was syrupy sweet, oozing with a manufactured concern that made my skin crawl. "Clayton, honey, is that really you? Oh, I can't believe it. Your mother sent me this video, and I just wept. To see you doing so well after all this time. We were all so worried. Worried." The word hung in the air, a blatant lie. They hadn't been worried. They had been relieved. Relieved to have the problem, the disappointment, gone. "We have to get you to the family reunion," she gushed, not waiting for me to speak. "It's time to let bygones be bygones. Time for the family to heal." Her words were smooth and polished, but underneath I could hear the grinding of an agenda. This wasn't about healing. This was about a story. The prodigal son, the family that never gave up hope. I was their new, shiny object to show off. My success wasn't mine. It was a reflection of their tough love parenting. The thought made me sick. I mumbled something non-committal and hung up, the phone feeling slick with sweat in my hand. The storm I had been running from for 13 years had finally found me. The invitations kept coming. Texts from cousins I hadn't spoken to since I was a child. A formal, gold-embossed invitation to the reunion in the mail. They were laying it on thick, creating a narrative of a joyous, long-awaited homecoming. Every message felt like a thread in a net they were trying to cast over me. I talked to Chloe and Maya about it over beers one night. "It's a trap," Chloe said bluntly, wiping foam from her lip. "They don't want you. They want your story. They want to stand next to you and say, 'Look what we created.'" Maya was more measured, her brow furrowed in thought. "They can't rewrite history if you're the one holding the pen, Clayton. What do you want?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? I wanted them to acknowledge what they did. I wanted them to understand the years of grinding loneliness, the nights I spent wondering if I would even make it. But I knew I would never get that. People like them didn't admit fault. They just adjusted the story to make themselves the heroes. The decision was made for me by an unexpected message. It was from my cousin, Isabella. She was only a kid when I left, but I remembered her being a quiet, watchful girl. Her message was hesitant, clearly written in secret. "Clayton, it's Izzy. I don't know if you remember me. I saw the video. It was amazing. You're amazing. But I wanted to warn you. It was Aunt Caroline who found it first. She sent it to everyone. She's been telling people she never gave up on finding you." My blood ran cold. So it was Caroline. I had suspected as much. She was the family's master puppeteer, always pulling strings from the shadows, creating drama and then swooping in to fix it. Isabella's message continued. "She's the one pushing so hard for you to come to the reunion. And this is the bad part. She's been talking to a reporter from the local paper. She told them there was going to be a heartwarming family reconciliation. She invited them to come and cover it." I leaned back in my chair, the phone feeling heavy in my hand. It all clicked into place. This wasn't just about family pride. This was a performance. A publicity stunt orchestrated by my aunt, where I was the unwilling star. They were going to parade me around, feed a saccharine story to the press, and use my hard-won success to whitewash their cruelty. Any protest from me would just look like bitterness, like I was the ungrateful one, spoiling their perfect family moment. They had set a stage and I was expected to play my part. The thought of them using my life, my pain, as a prop for their social standing made something hard and sharp settle in my chest. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was resolve. I showed Isabella's message to Chloe and Maya. Chloe let out a string of curses that would have made a sailor blush. Maya just shook her head slowly, her expression hardening. You can't go, Chloe said immediately. Don't give them the satisfaction. Just block their numbers and let them choke on their little newspaper story. Or, Maya said, her voice quiet but firm, you go. But you don't go as the lost little boy they're expecting. You don't go to reconcile. You go to reclaim your story. She looked me straight in the eye. You don't owe them an explanation for your life, Clayton. But if you go, go as the person you became, not the girl they left behind. She caught her slip, a small smile playing on her lips. The boy they left behind. Her words resonated deep within me. She was right. Hiding wouldn't solve anything. It would just let them control the narrative forever. They thought they had written the end of my story 13 years ago at that bus station. It was time to show them they hadn't even written the first chapter. Chloe, ever the pragmatist, leaned forward, a glint in her eye. Okay, if you're gonna do this, you're gonna do it right. She started pacing, her mind clearly working. You don't just show up. You don't drive there in your beat-up work truck. You don't show up like a ghost. You show up like the plot twist. A slow smile spread across my face. Plot twist. I liked the sound of that. For 13 years, I had defined myself by my work, by my quiet dedication. I had let my success speak for itself. But this moment called for something different. Called for a statement. It wasn't about showing off my money. It was about showing them, in a language they would understand, the language of power and appearance, that I was no longer the powerless boy they had discarded. I thought about Mr. Peterson, the kind old man whose vintage car I'd restored. He had a side business, a small luxury car service he ran for special occasions. He owned one car, a pristine, gleaming black 1980s Lincoln Town Car limousine. It was ostentatious. It was dramatic. It was perfect. I picked up my phone. Mr. Peterson, I said when he answered. It's Clayton Vance. I have a favor to ask. I need to rent your limousine for a few hours next Saturday. There was a pause on the other end, then a warm chuckle. Going somewhere special, son? You could say that, I replied, looking at the reunion flyer still taped to my wall. I'm going to see my family. The moment my mother's question, "Can I help you?" hung in the air between us, my father and Nathan finally noticed the commotion and started walking over. My father's face was a mixture of suspicion and annoyance, the look he always wore when confronted with something he didn't understand. Nathan just looked bored. I let the silence stretch, watching the recognition slowly dawn on my father's face first. His eyes widened slightly, the jovial host persona slipping away to reveal the cold man I remembered. He took a half step back, as if hit by an invisible force. Clayton? He breathed, the name sounding foreign on his lips. My mother's head snapped toward him, then back to me. Her carefully constructed smile collapsed. Her face went pale, her eyes darting over my features, desperately trying to reconcile the stranger in front of her with the son she had abandoned. Clayton. It was Nathan who broke the spell. He let out a short, incredulous laugh. No way, little Clay. What the hell are you doing here? And what's with the car? You hit the lottery or something? That was the opening they needed. The shock quickly morphed into a flurry of activity as they scrambled to reclaim control of the situation, to absorb this unexpected development into their pre-written narrative. Oh my goodness, Clayton, my mother exclaimed, her voice suddenly loud, performing for the nearby guests who were now openly staring. She lunged forward and wrapped me in a stiff, awkward hug. It was like being embraced by a stranger. She smelled of expensive hairspray and denial. We've missed you so much. We were so worried. My father found his footing, clapping a heavy hand on my shoulder. His grip was tight, proprietary. Look at you, all grown up. We always knew you had it in you. Guess we raised you tough, eh? That's the Vance way. We raised you tough. The words were so audacious, so utterly disconnected from reality, that I almost laughed. They hadn't raised me tough. They had tried to break me. Then came Aunt Caroline, gliding through the crowd like a shark sensing blood in the water. She clasped her hands over her heart, her eyes wide with what was supposed to be joyous disbelief. He came. Oh, Richard, Eleanor, he came. Our boy is home. She squeezed my arm, her nails digging in slightly. I told you, didn't I? I told everyone that our Clayton would find his way back. It was a masterful performance. In less than 60 seconds, they had transformed an uncomfortable confrontation into a heartwarming family reunion. They were writing the story in real time, and the other family members were eating it up. Cousins and uncles I barely remembered came over to shake my hand, to slap my back, telling me how great I looked, how they always knew I'd land on my feet. They pulled me deeper into the party, a whirlwind of fake smiles and rewritten histories. They asked no real questions. They didn't ask where I had been living, what my life was like, or if I was happy. They only asked questions that reflected back on them. Do you remember the summers we spent at the lake? We taught you how to fish. They didn't. You always were a creative boy, always tinkering with things in the garage. My father had forbidden me from touching his tools. I played along, my responses short and non-committal. I was an actor in their play, waiting for my cue. Nathan stuck to my side, a smug look on his face, as if my presence was somehow a testament to his own success. He introduced me to his perfectly manicured wife and 2 children, who looked at me with bored indifference. This is my little brother, Clay, he'd say, the artist of the family. The way he said it made it sound like a quaint, harmless hobby. They had no idea. They saw the expensive clothes and the limousine and assumed I'd gotten lucky. They didn't see the 13 years of calloused hands, sleepless nights, and relentless, grinding work. And that was just fine. The truth, I knew, had a way of making its own entrance. The centerpiece of the party, aside from me, was a long, beautiful harvest table set up under the main tent, groaning with food. It was a magnificent piece of furniture, solid black walnut, with a live edge and intricate ironwork legs. It was also one of mine. Aunt Caroline had ordered it a month ago through a designer, using a different name. She had no idea it was from my workshop. The irony was so thick I could taste it. About an hour into the charade, my father tapped a glass for a toast. He made a rambling speech about family, legacy, and the importance of tradition. Then he introduced the guest of honor, a man I hadn't noticed before. He was older, impeccably dressed, with an air of quiet authority. And I'd like to extend a special welcome to our distinguished guest, Mr. Harrison, my father announced proudly. Mr. Harrison is the CEO of Harrison Design Group, one of the top firms in the country. He's an old friend, and we're so thrilled he could join us. Mr. Harrison. My heart hammered against my ribs. I knew that name. His company had just signed a massive contract to furnish a chain of boutique hotels. A contract my workshop was in the running for. It was the kind of deal that could change everything. Mr. Harrison took the microphone, his smile gracious. He said a few polite words about my father and the beauty of the party. And I must say, Caroline, he said, turning to my aunt, your taste is impeccable. This table. He ran his hand along the smooth, oiled surface of the walnut. This is extraordinary. This is the work of a true artist. In fact, my company has been trying to identify the craftsman behind this specific style for weeks. We've been tracking his work ever since we saw a short film online called Hands Make Homes. A collective, sharp intake of breath seemed to suck the air out of the tent. Aunt Caroline's face froze, her smile turning into a brittle, confused mask. My mother and father exchanged a panicked look. All across the lawn, the smiling faces of my relatives turned to slack-jawed astonishment. They all turned to look at me. Mr. Harrison, oblivious to the family drama he had just detonated, continued. We believe he's one of the most promising furniture designers in the country. A true, undiscovered talent. If anyone knows this, Vance Woodcraft, I'd be very keen to have a word. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop on the grass. Every eye was locked on me. My father's face was ashen. My mother looked like she was going to be sick. This is the moment that changed everything, the moment I finally took back control of my own life. Thank you for staying with me this far, you're amazing. Please help me out by liking this video and commenting the number 1 down below, just so I know you've journeyed with me to this point. It not only helps more people find this story, but it lets me know that my experiences mean something to someone out there. Your support is the biggest motivation for me to continue sharing the rest of this journey. It was my cousin Isabella who finally broke the silence. That's him, she whispered, her voice carrying in the stillness. Vance Woodcraft. That's Clayton. Mr. Harrison's eyes found me in the crowd. A slow smile of genuine delight spread across his face. Well, I'll be, he said, stepping forward, his hand outstretched. The man of the hour. I should have known. It's a pleasure to finally meet you, Mr. Vance. As I stepped forward to shake his hand, a frantic tug on my arm stopped me. It was Nathan. His face was pale and slick with sweat. His earlier arrogance had vanished, replaced by sheer, animal panic. He pulled me away from the crowd, his voice a desperate, harsh whisper. Clay, you gotta help me. You gotta help me, man. What are you talking about, Nathan? I'm in trouble. Real trouble. He hissed, his eyes darting around nervously. I made some bad investments. I owe a lot of money. Dad threatened to cut me off, said something about calling the lawyer to change the will, cut me out of my inheritance. If I can't pay these guys back, they're gonna ruin me. Maybe worse. You have money now. You have to help the family. And there it was. The real reason. Not concern, not love, not even pride. Just greed and desperation. I wasn't his long-lost brother. I was his last-ditch bailout. I looked from Nathan's desperate, pleading face to the stunned crowd. Mr. Harrison was watching us, his expression now coolly curious. My parents were frozen in place, their faces a tableau of horror and humiliation. Aunt Caroline looked like her carefully planned party had just been hit by a freight train. The entire, elaborate fiction they had constructed had just crumbled into dust, and they had no idea what to do. I turned back to Nathan, pulling my arm from his grasp. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I spoke in a low, calm tone that was somehow more chilling than shouting. Help the family? I repeated, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. The same family that left me at a bus station with $60 and wished me good luck? Nathan flinched as if I'd struck him. It wasn't like that, Clay. We thought it would be good for you, to build character. Don't, I said, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. Don't you dare try to justify it now. You didn't think about me at all. None of you did. I walked away from him, back toward my parents. They looked trapped like animals caught in headlights. My mother took a step forward, her hands outstretched in a weak, pleading gesture. Clayton, please, she whispered. We can talk about this. We made a mistake. A mistake, I said, my voice dangerously quiet. A mistake is taking a wrong turn. A mistake is forgetting to pick up milk from the store. You didn't make a mistake. You made a choice. You chose to throw me away because I was an inconvenience. Because I wasn't the son you wanted. My father finally found his voice, sputtering with indignation. Now you listen here. After everything we did for you, everything you did for me, I cut him off, a raw, bitter laugh escaping my lips. You did nothing. Everything I have, I built myself. I built it from the dirt you left me in. Every splinter, every scar, every sleepless night. That was me. You don't get to claim one single piece of it. I looked at all of them, my parents, my brother, my aunt. I saw them for what they were. Not monsters. Just small, selfish people, terrified of their own mediocrity. I didn't come here for an apology, I said, my voice ringing with a finality that echoed across the silent lawn. I know I'll never get one. I came here to close a door, to show you that the boy you threw away did more than just survive. I turned to Mr. Harrison, who was watching the entire exchange with a look of profound understanding. Mr. Harrison, I said, my voice returning to its normal, professional tone. I'd be delighted to discuss the hotel contract with you. My office will be in touch on Monday. He nodded, a look of respect in his eyes. I look forward to it, Mr. Vance. Then I turned back to my parents. "Your concern," I said, the words precise and measured, "is 13 years too late." I looked at Nathan. "I built my own life. You should try it sometime." With that, I turned my back on them. I didn't run. I didn't storm off. I just walked, my steps even and deliberate, across the lawn and toward the gate where Mr. Peterson was waiting patiently by the limousine. The silence that followed me was heavier than any argument could ever be. The party was over. The happy family reunion was a smoking crater. I could feel their eyes on my back, 100 burning points of shock and anger and shame. Aunt Caroline was fumbling with her phone, probably trying to take a picture to sell to the reporter who was no doubt on their way, but her hands were shaking too badly. I didn't look back. Not once. I didn't want to see their faces. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing any emotion on mine. This moment wasn't for them. It was for the 18-year-old boy I had left behind at that bus station. It was for the exhausted young man scrubbing dishes and sleeping in a closet. It was the closing of a chapter, the final page of a book I had been forced to read for far too long. Mr. Peterson opened the long rear door of the limousine for me. As I slid onto the cool leather seat, I caught a glimpse of my father taking an angry step forward, his mouth opening as if to shout something. But my mother put a hand on his arm and he stopped. His shoulders slumped in defeat. No one called my name. No one told me to come back. In the end, their silence was the most honest thing they had ever given me. It was a confirmation of everything I already knew. They were never going to fight for me. They had let me go easily once, and they were letting me go again. The only difference was that this time, it was my choice. Mr. Peterson closed the door, shutting out the world of manicured lawns and ugly truths. He got into the driver's seat and the powerful engine purred to life. The limousine pulled away from the curb as smoothly as it had arrived, leaving my family standing like statues in the wreckage of their own party. As we turned the corner, I finally allowed myself to look back in the side mirror. They were just a small, distant group of people, shrinking into the past where they belonged. And for the first time in 13 years, I felt completely and utterly free. 6 months passed. The autumn leaves in Brookfield turned to gold and crimson, and the air grew crisp with the promise of winter. The memory of the reunion faded, not into nothingness, but into a quiet, settled place in my past. It was a scar, not a wound. Vance Woodcraft was no longer housed in Elias's old barn. After signing the Harrison Hotel contract, a deal that secured my company's future for the next 5 years, I had moved us into a massive, state-of-the-art workshop on the other side of town. It was a beautiful space with high ceilings, huge windows that flooded the floor with natural light, and the best equipment money could buy. But the soul of the old place remained. The smell of sawdust was the same. The dedication to the craft was the same. Ray was now my workshop foreman, overseeing a team of 10 skilled artisans. I had poached Chloe from Rita's diner, making her my business manager. She ran the office with terrifying efficiency, her brightly colored hair a beacon of cheerful authority amidst the chaos of a growing business. I spent most of my days designing and working on special projects, but what I loved most was teaching. Twice a week, I held an apprenticeship program for local kids who, like me, didn't fit the traditional mold. I taught them how to use their hands, how to find the story in a piece of wood. I saw the same spark of passion in their eyes that Elias must have seen in mine all those years ago. One afternoon, Elias came to visit the new workshop. He walked through the bustling space, his old eyes taking in everything, from the computer-controlled saws to the young apprentices carefully sanding their first projects. He didn't say much, just nodded occasionally. I led him to my office and handed him an envelope. "What's this?" he grumbled. "That's the money I owe you," I said. "For 13 years of rent, for the tools, for the materials I used when I was starting out. It's all there, plus interest." It was a cashier's check for a substantial amount, enough for him to retire comfortably several times over. He opened the envelope, looked at the check, and slid it back across the desk to me. "I told you, the work was the rent. Elias, please. I have to." He held up a hand, silencing me. He took a pen, scribbled on the back of the envelope, and pushed it back to me. He had written a number on it, the exact small amount of money he had paid for the lumber for my very first commissioned bookshelf. "That," he said, his voice raspy with emotion, "is all you ever owed me. The rest you earned." He stood up, put a gnarled hand on my shoulder, and squeezed. "You did good, kid." He walked out of my office, leaving me sitting there with a lump in my throat and the check in my hand. He hadn't just taught me woodworking. He had taught me what it meant to be a man of integrity, what it meant to invest in someone without expecting anything in return. He had been the father I never had. My life had found a new rhythm, a peaceful, productive hum. My relationship with Maya had deepened into a quiet, steady partnership. She had moved to Brookfield, setting up her own small production company. We didn't talk about marriage or a big promotion or any of the usual milestones. We just built a life together, day by day, a life filled with shared meals, late-night conversations, and the comfortable silence of two people who understood each other completely. She was my anchor and my muse. I never heard directly from my parents or Nathan again. After the disastrous reunion, their corner of the world went quiet. I assumed they were still there, living their lives, but they were no longer a part of mine. I set up a filter on my email account that sent any message from their names or my aunt's name directly to a trash folder. I never saw them, never read them. It was a small, digital boundary that brought me immense peace. There would be no dramatic divorce announcements or desperate pleas for funeral money. Their chapter was closed. One day, a handwritten letter arrived at the workshop. The return address was unfamiliar, but the postmark was from my old hometown. I almost threw it away, but my curiosity got the better of me. It was from Isabella. "My dearest cousin Clayton, I don't know if this will reach you, but I had to try. I've been thinking about you a lot since the reunion. What you did that day, it was the bravest thing I have ever seen. You spoke the truth in a house built on whispers. After you left, everything fell apart. Not in a loud way, but in a quiet, rotting way. Aunt Caroline's story in the paper never ran. Mr. Harrison is a very powerful man, and word got around about what really happened. Nathan ended up having to declare bankruptcy. Dad and Mom, they just seem old now. They never talk about you. It's like you don't exist, which is funny, because you're the only one who seems real anymore. Seeing you, seeing what you built, it made me realize something. I've been trying to live the life they wanted for me, the safe college, the sensible major. But it's not me. After that day, I dropped out. I'm in art school now, paying my own way. It's hard, and I'm scared all the time, but for the first time, I feel like I'm breathing my own air. I just wanted to say thank you. You didn't just build a new life for yourself. You showed me it was possible to build one for myself, too. With love and admiration, Izzy." I folded the letter, my vision a little blurry. I had gone to that reunion to end something, to get closure for myself. I never imagined that my stand could be a beginning for someone else. It was a humbling reminder that our stories are never just our own. They ripple outwards, touching lives in ways we can never predict. That evening, Maya found me in the workshop, just staring out at the setting sun. She wrapped her arms around me from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "Family," I said, leaning back into her embrace. "The one you lose, and the one you find." She squeezed me tighter. "The one you build," she corrected gently. And I knew she was right. My real family was all around me. In the warmth of her embrace, in Chloe's fierce loyalty, in Elias's quiet wisdom, in the dedicated work of my team. This was the family I had built. This was the home my hands had made. It's quiet in the workshop now. The machines are silent, the apprentices have gone home, and the last golden rays of the afternoon sun are slanting through the big windows, illuminating a million dancing particles of sawdust in the air. It's my favorite time of day. The air smells of cut pine, machine oil, and possibility. I'm running my hand over the top of a new piece, a cherry wood desk destined for a writer's study. The wood is cool and smooth beneath my palm, the grain flowing like a silent river. 13 years. Sometimes it feels like a lifetime, other times like a single, long breath. I don't think about the reunion much anymore. It's no longer a source of pain or anger. It's just a story, one of many that make up a life. I no longer carry the weight of their expectations or their disappointment. That burden was never mine to hold. I left it on the grass of my aunt's lawn, and I never looked back to see if anyone picked it up. My life isn't defined by that single act of defiance. It's defined by the thousands of small, quiet acts that came before it and after it. It's defined by the choice to get on a bus to nowhere. It's defined by the willingness to scrub other people's dishes, to learn a craft from the ground up, to trust again after being betrayed. It's defined by the grain of the wood, the edge of the blade, the satisfaction of a perfect joint. They thought they were writing me off. They thought they were closing a book. But they only wrote a single cruel sentence. The rest of the pages were blank, and they gave me the greatest gift they could have possibly imagined, the chance to fill them myself. I look at my hands. They're not the smooth hands of the boy I used to be. They're scarred and calloused, with sawdust permanently etched into the lines of my palms. They're a map of my journey. They're the hands that built a business, a home, a life. I wasn't written off. I was rewritten. And this life, this beautiful, quiet life of sawdust and sunlight, is the only version that matters. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it has touched you in some way. Have you ever had a moment in your life that completely changed its direction? Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss what's next.